Hi, I'm Adrian, and I'm a designer.
And my name is Florine, and I'm a developer. On this episode, we're going to talk about progressive enhancement.
So progressive enhancement, it's not a new topic, is it?
Not really, but it has become, I'd say it has become hot again. The thing is, we are currently building JavaScript only, one-page applications, and it has become even more important now that we apply the principle of progressive enhancement, in my opinion, than we did when we just make websites with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Okay. First of all, can you explain to me what that is exactly, progressive enhancement?
I'm going to, but first, I really want to know what you're drinking, because this looks like brown juice.
It's not brown juice. Actually, this is my dishwater from last night. Dishwashing.
Well, thanks.
No, this is called Mishmash. It's also a German soda. We'll find out.
So they mixed Coke with something orangey?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. It's not bad.
So, progressive enhancement. Progressive enhancement is not a technology. That's very important to keep in mind. It's not a technology, it's a way of thinking. I think Jeremy Keith said that, and I have to agree. When we make websites, progressive enhancement is basically you build in layers. You have the content layer, which is HTML, which gives your content meaning, and then on top of that you have the visual layer. That's the CSS.
CSS, yeah.
And on top of that, you've got a functional layer, which is JavaScript. And what you do is, by building in layers, you make sure that your website or your application works on all of these with these layers on and off. Of course, there is a baseline, because without the HTML, you have nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing to display. So
no, of course.
Basically, okay. So that's like the minimum that you absolutely need to display your content.
Yeah, exactly. But when we're building what we may call a modern web application, where we do a lot with JavaScript, these principles may not always be able to apply these, because sometimes HTML is rendered by JavaScript. Mm-hmm. And what if that JavaScript isn't available?
So does that mean that progressive enhancement is basically like, don't use JavaScript?
No, absolutely not. It's about thinking, how do we deliver the content or the functionality to the user? And for instance, if you're building a web conferencing system with real-time video, it's going to be quite hard to do that, or let's say it's impossible to do that without JavaScript.
Okay. Yeah.
Or Flash or some.
Just some technology that can do things that
exactly.
HTML, CSS can't.
So, if you're going to progressively enhance that, you're going to say, okay, the baseline is we need to have WebRTC, for instance, in a browser, or you need to have Flash installed, because otherwise you cannot use the features.
Okay, so
well, theoretically you could downgrade it. For instance, okay, I don't have WebRTC, but I can fall back to a text-based input, like a chat window. That's also progressive. Thinking about it like that is also progressive enhancement. Then again, you may not, because that experience is worthless in combination with the video calling.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't quite achieve the same goal as that you set out to achieve. Okay. But so does that mean that that progressive enhancement is not like a global statement about how something should or should not be built, but more like you can define this, what you call the baseline, from project to project?
Yes, I think so. It's actually about thinking, how are we going to make the functionality or the content available to as many people or users as possible. And this without going too much into the accessibility part of this, because that's also a big thing I think about progressive enhancement, is that you make your website accessible. There's also the availability part, because nowadays we assume that, okay, we all have great internet connections, or even on a mobile, okay, you have 3G and 4G everywhere, and that's simply not true, because let's be honest, when you're on a train,
you go into a tunnel,
and you go but maybe you're going just through a rural area.
Yeah, and you're like halfway loading your JavaScript, and then it's like, nope.
Exactly. And I just wanted to look up the address of the in my in-company address book or something like that on my phone, and that's going to be such this is, so availability is a big thing there.
Yeah, and since we are also developing for global markets, there are many areas in the world where
exactly
high-speed connections are not available, where connections are spotty at best.
Well, but even here in the Netherlands, we have really great 3G and 4G coverage. It's still a problem. And that's why we should take into account working this. And this is also actually, I think, when you work with progressive enhancement, or when you work in a progressively enhanced way, you should also take into account, okay, what if the user is offline? What kind of experience are we going to supply the user with then? And this is one of the things we heard in the developer community is okay, but so this means I cannot use new browser feature, and that's absolutely not true.
So you basically have to support every old browser. That means you cannot build for the latest browsers.
Exactly, but that's not true, because what you do is you go back to a baseline, and it probably is absolutely fine that your website doesn't look exactly the same in IE8 as it does in IE11.
That is a problem for designers who who don't understand that it's not at all important that the content is displayed exactly the same way in every browser. Because I mean, someone looking at a website on a Kindle, for instance, will have a vastly different experience than someone, I don't know many people who browse with Kindle, but it happens. Than say an iPhone 6 Plus or an iMac.
Exactly, but that's something we have to deal with also in the design.
Yeah.
What can fall off, and maybe it's okay to say, okay, in IE8 I'm just going to show the content and there is no styling there. But you're still making it accessible, available to anyone not being able to use CSS, not being able to use JavaScript. And the great thing about progressive enhancement, the second part, just is, it's first thing is how it looks. The second thing is how it works. Maybe it's fine that on IE8 or IE9 or Opera Mini, because Opera Mini has doesn't do fonts, for instance.
It strips out pretty much everything.
It does this for optimization reasons.
Yeah, and for a low-speed internet, that Opera Mini is awesome.
Exactly. Or also, if you have very expensive internet, if you pay by
also
data,
by the megabyte. Yeah.
So the thing is that you may have a different experience, but you still allow your user to use your application or your website with these conditions.
And they can still access your content.
Exactly.
But I can see a problem there if you have a lot of content generated by JavaScript.
Exactly.
Because that's like the top layer. That's like the last layer, and that's probably where this idea came from, that you can't use JavaScript.
Yes, maybe. But that's of course this problem is getting bigger and bigger if we are going to rely more and more on JavaScript to do things in our website, and our website doesn't work without JavaScript.
Well, this is I don't know who said this, but that we should not expect the internet as a platform to work without JavaScript in the future, which I think is really a strange comment.
I think so as well. Because there are so many cases where JavaScript can't be executed, JavaScript can't be loaded, or not completely loaded.
And it's not fault tolerant. So if you So HTML, if there's bad HTML in there, it'll just ignore it.
It's exactly the same with CSS. CSS as a technology is built in a progressively enhanced way. So if your browser encounters a rule that he doesn't understand, it will just skip that rule and continue. So that's basically, it has progressive enhancement built in.
Yeah.
So for me, progressive enhancement also means actually using new features of browsers, because you're going to enhance, hence the name, progressive enhanced, you're going to enhance the experience of that baseline you have defined. So that's where you will make the difference between you and your competitor also, I think. When you have working websites that work on 3G when you're in the train and have bad connection.
I can see that. So what would this mean for a designer? Like, we work with design code, which is refined over time by many people who work on it. And is there something that designers should keep in mind when they're writing this code? Or should we just say, nah, you know what, the developers will take care of that afterwards? Or
no, I don't think.
I mean, you mentioned it's a way of thinking and not a technology. Or
yeah, I don't think you can't slap on progressive enhancement on afterwards.
Okay.
It's something you have to do from the get-go.
Yeah.
Because you should start with, okay, what's my baseline? What are we going to expose to the user when they use a text browser, a screen reader, or don't have JavaScript?
Yes.
Are we going to show them just text where it says, sorry, you need to load JavaScript, or is it going?
You need a more modern browser.
Or you need or are we going to give them an experience that is still where they can still access the content or the functionalities of the application? So that's it's a mindset. So and this can also be done with design. For instance, if you build a form and you want to use, so let's say you want to use a component like chosen, which is a select box component that where you can do search and you can do some other advanced things. It's built in a way that is actually progressive enhanced, because when you can load the JavaScript, it's just a select box. It still works because it's a basic select box in your browser.
So it's like native browser
Exactly. But what they do is they will enhance it to something that gives extra features. But still,
if it breaks, you can still use the select box as
because it may not be as easy to use, but it's still possible to use it, and it will not break.
I can see a large benefit in there, but for many designers, especially designers who still work in static design tools, they will not really understand how this works, because basically what they deliver is, well, I want it to look like this, and they give it to the developer, and then the developer's like, yeah,
I'm going to make it work like this.
I'm going to make it work like this, but I will also make it work even if it's not loading the entire thing, or if something goes wrong. And then the designer will probably come back to the developer and say, I looked at it and it looks weird.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part of it, involving designers in this way of thinking. And when you're making a design, think about what would happen. How would it look if all the content would be linearized or put under each other? Think about how certain functionalities could work without a fancy pop-up, and that's so. But I think the main responsibility within progressive enhancement is with the developer. He has the knowledge on how to do it and what technical solution they're going to choose, and how are we going to implement it.
I get that, but as we become better collaborators, so designers and developers who work much closer together now than they did even 5 years ago. Isn't it important for designers to work in a way that sort of prevents misunderstandings in this area? So they can expect things to look weird on IE6, or
maybe, but I have yet to find a designer that's going to look at the website in IE6.
I don't.
But still, I get what you mean.
Because we are working on becoming better at looking at how functionality affects design, or design in the sense of how does something work. But we're still very visually oriented as a professional group. So For us, in the end, we will still weigh the how something is visually presented very, very heavily. So, and if things don't work out the way we want, designers tend not to enjoy that.
Well, the thing is, progressive enhancement is still something I see a lot of developers as well think of. Oh shit! I have to build it without JavaScript, or I have to, do extra things so that it works without X or without Y. And I guess that's going to be a struggle we will have with designers as well. Is we have to educate them and talk to them about, okay, but we're doing this because. And it's important that when you have it in your process and you work together, I think it's less of a problem. But for our website, for instance, we had this requirement where, okay, the website has to work in Lynx as well. And Lynx is a text-based browser.
Okay.
It just does text. I don't think it maybe does some CSS for text colors and things like that. But it's really basic. So it doesn't do boxes next to each other. It just puts everything, linearizes everything.
Yeah, so it's like just the HTML basically.
Exactly. So that's the content, and that's what we want to explore.
So like responsive 1.0.
Maybe you could look at it as that.
HTML is responsive.
Yeah.
Always has been. We've just been breaking it by styling it.
True. And responsive design in itself is actually a progressive enhancement as well, because you have a baseline, and that can be, it doesn't matter if you do mobile first or content first or whatever you call it. You have a baseline, and you can show that everywhere, but then you're going to enhance for different screen sizes.
Yeah, so you basically start out with the base layer, the foundation, which is the HTML, and then you build on top of that.
Exactly.
You build the CSS, and if that goes well, then
exactly
you will have these features that.
Exactly. And the biggest problem is that we as developers, but probably also as designers, is we make too much assumptions about what the end user can do, has, or is doing at the moment. And so you know the saying, to assume makes an ass out of you and me, and that's exactly this. Because I assume you have JavaScript, but why do I assume that?
Because you have JavaScript.
I have JavaScript, and I'm on a fast 1 gigabit connection here. So, yeah, of course, my JavaScript always loads.
I think you can relativize this to death. I mean, anyone can just say, well, our users, they don't turn off JavaScript, and I know a very, very small group of people actually turn off their JavaScript, but they then forget that some people may not have a choice in this matter if they, go with the train through a rural area or into a tunnel or whatever.
There is actually a pretty cool flowchart about JavaScript always works. Okay. And they have put, I'll put the link in the description. They have all these edge cases. Okay, if you're not on a train, if you're not on 3G, if you haven't disabled it, and disabling the JavaScript isn't the problem.
No, that's like the smallest fraction of users who
there
actually do that.
There are maybe still some company.
Also an assumption.
Yeah, maybe still some company proxies that will turn it off, or company policies that will turn it off. But this is really, really, really minor in comparison to all the other edge cases. Mm-hmm. And we keep assuming that internet speeds go up and everything is getting better, but the opposite is true, in fact. But this flowchart has like 10, 15 points where it can go wrong.
Oh, so it basically maps out, okay, this is all the requirements you need to fulfill in order to actually...
Yeah, and it ends it, okay, and if the above is all true, the JavaScript loads and runs. So that's that's quite good. And that's always about these assumptions that my user has a fast connection, my user is on a mobile, or my user is on a desktop, my user has a camera, my user, etc., etc., etc.
But is there research or statistics or anything that can sort of fill in for these assumptions that we make that we maybe base on nothing? Do you think that helps, or is that?
That
doesn't really matter.
I don't think that really matters, because that's still statistics.
Yeah. So statistics don't apply to the individual.
No,
so
absolutely
basically,
not. So that may work for. Okay.
Statistics say 99 people have or 100% of people have JavaScript, but you're the one guy who doesn't, and then you're screwed.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Okay. So let's not assume too much.
No, let's not assume too much. And well, I think it was an interesting discussion because we have this as developers. We mostly have this discussion with other developers, and then a lot of discussion goes around. Okay, but this is extra work for me, and I think having a designer's perspective on this is quite nice.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I learned a lot. So
I hope you did too. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. Maybe you have some ideas about progressive enhancement and how it affects you, or what you made with it, or what you can do with it. And comment, subscribe. We would like to thank DigitPaint for lending us this room to record this. And of course, the always lovely Lieke Esveld of Esveld Photo, who is recording these sessions for us. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.